Hi there, welcome to No Nonsense Whisky. My name's VinPF and welcome to the first episode of 2022, the latest review, which is a Loch Lomond single grain peated. And this also says coffee still on this, which gives us a little bit of a clue. We'll go into that a little bit later on. Now, obviously Loch Lomond Distillery, I haven't covered many of those on the channel, certainly never kind of a full bottle, but I went in for this because I found it at my local Morrison's, which is a superstore in the UK if you're from abroad, and it was going for £22.50, which seemed a bit of a steal to me, so I just picked it up, didn't really know anything about it at the time. Now, Loch Lomond themselves are pretty much well known as one of the most versatile Scottish distilleries out there. They've got an array of different stills. They've got some pot stills, they've got some column stills, they've got this kind of thing which they call the Lomond still, which, we'll go into another day because it doesn't really relate to this whiskey in any case. But this one here is made entirely in their continuous stills, which is their coffee stills. Now that's an interesting thing. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about the actual label. Now the one thing I will say about this up front is that before we get into the actual whiskey and all of that, is that a very important lesson is to be learned with this one, for me at least anyway, because loads of people that I know rave about this whiskey and they say, it's just a really good guard whiskey almost. And I popped the cork and I put it in the glass, and the first couple of mouthfuls of it I really didn't like, and it wasn't like anything specific I could put my finger on. It just didn't really do anything for me. It was certainly drinkable, of course, and I couldn't really understand why everyone was going on about it so much. But as I always do, if the neck pour, and I take a good wedge out of it, when this happens, when the neck pour and just after it isn't so good for me, I'll then put the cork back in. I'll make sure a good wedge is out of it. Maybe put it into a sample bottle or something like that, and I'll put it on the shelf for a couple of weeks and see if it changes, because a little bit of oxidization never hurt anybody. And I have to say, spoiler alert for the rest of the video, is that's exactly what's happened here, which I'm very happy about, because I don't like to be in a situation where sort of everybody seems to love something and I don't. Of course, if that was the case, genuinely I would tell everybody that's what it is, but it's always worth trying. If you don't like a whiskey when you first try it, don't judge a whiskey on the neck pour or the ones directly after it. If you really don't like a whiskey, make sure you do what I said about there, stick it on the shelf for a couple of weeks or months and see what happens. It can only get better, and if it gets worse, you've not lost anything more than you lost when you first popped that cork. Let's get back into this actual whiskey and get on with it. First things first, I will say, opaque bottle. Not happy with that, lads, but whatever. This one here, I've checked it against the light. I've got a really bright light up here, as you probably used to see, the ring light, whatnot, and I can't see a damn thing through this. Nothing. That is an opaque bottle, and yes, some people don't mind that, but for me, really don't like it. Just show off your liquid. Whatever, man. It's pure marketing. Not a fan of that. That said, I'm a fan of Loch Lomond, so we'll forgive them that for this particular one, because it is good liquid. But let's check out this one itself. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of words on the label here. We've got Loch Lomond single grain Scotch whisky peated. There is an original version of this, the non-peated, which is a red label. Haven't got that one to cover today, just the peated. And this is the kind of latest release. This sells on their website for 30 quid, but I got it for £22.50, so already I feel like I'm getting a bit of a steal. Now, the interesting thing here is the single grain element of it. When you see the word single grain on a whiskey, that usually means that it's a mixture of malted barley along with some other bits and bobs. Could be almost anything that is considered a grain, but it's run through a continuous still. In this situation here, yes, it's run through a continuous still, but it is 100% malted barley, same as you would in a pot still. But of course, because it's gone through that continuous still process, it cannot be called a single malt whiskey, which technically it is in terms of the barley. It's just been through that continuous still instead. And what they say this does is it takes the heavily peated malted barley, which is peated to 50 ppms, which is the same as a lot of these really heavy peats, but when you put it through the continuous still, they say this takes a kind of lighter flavour and really rounds off those peated notes coming through. The other thing to remember about this is the cask types used. It's got first fill and refill American oak, which is ex-bourbon. Nothing too crazy there, but this is going to be an interesting one for sure. Obviously, the other cool thing about this is it's 46%. We like that. And it does state on the label non-chill filtered, but it doesn't state natural colour, which is something that really confuses me. I know Loch Lomond fairly well, even though I haven't covered many of it on the channel. So I'm going to err on the side of I think that it is natural colour. But if it is, why not say it on the label? If you've taken the trouble to put non-chill filtered on there, I don't understand why a distillery wouldn't put directly underneath natural colour as well, if it is. So, you know, the kind of natural assumption would be that this is probably added colour. But like I said earlier, you have to, when you know the distillery and you know what their practices are about, really, it doesn't matter. That's the kind of the key distinction here. It doesn't matter if they've added colour or not. But in my personal opinion, I think with all of the rules that the SWA has, many rules about, you know, the single grain stuff being in a continuous still, why not make it a rule that you must put added colour on the label if it has added colour? And that takes all the ambiguity away from it from a consumer point of view. If I don't see it on there, then I can assume that it is not added colour. Anyway, that's a couple of high horses. Let's get on to the actual liquid and see what we've got in the glass. Now, again, I'm not going to talk too much about colour. It is a lovely looking colour. It doesn't look too deep, which again gives me credence to believe that it probably isn't added colour. Even though I said I'm not going on about it, I'm going on about it. Let's get my nose into this thing and see what we've got. Now, on an initial assessment, I don't think that there's a hell of a lot of smoke in this. It's definitely got some wafts of it, but I don't think this is going to put off non-peat drinkers. I think this is a good bridging whiskey is what I'm trying to say. So not much smoke, but it's kind of nicely wafted around in there. Now the marketing on this goes on about blackberries and things like that, which I can't help but agree with. There's definitely this kind of like weird fruitiness to it that I can only attribute to a kind of a blackcurranty vibe now that I know that's what I'm getting. But for me, it's got a kind of like they've gone about floralness, but for me, it's erring on the side of like a heathery peatiness. Really nice nose, that's what I can say. Really nice nose. Let's get onto the palate then and see what's there. Okay, so this is a bit of a journey, but it all happens quite quickly, I think, until the end, but we'll get to that. Initially, before anything else kicks in, you do get that fruitiness. You don't have much time to pick it out, but it's there. Those black currants and those kind of vanilla-y notes, they're there very, very briefly, just before this big, bold, peppery spice comes along. And then, finally, the waft of smoke comes along. But this isn't like it isn't ashy, it isn't medicinal. It's kind of like a really light, it's not even kind of barbecue-y, really. It's just really like a nice, light, wafted smoke. Quite enjoying that. And then that flavour just keeps going on and on and on. I'm still sort of dealing with it now, which is lovely. I like that sort of thing. You know, I often talk about things like a bitterness or a sourness at the back end, which I like. You know, it makes me want to kind of reach for more. This isn't that. It isn't really sweet either. It's somewhere in between. But it just keeps going on and on and on. It's just really lovely. Now again, the smokiness isn't like overpowering. So even though it's heavily peated in terms of the barley that went into the still, the distilling process there in the continuous still has really kind of levelled that out. I think this again is a kind of nice bridging whiskey, especially for the cheapness of it. You know, I didn't see the red label one on the shelves in my Morrison's, so I can only assume they don't stock that. But to get this so cheap is just unreal luck. Yeah, I mean, for me, a bit of a winner. I have to say, even at full price, 30 quid, I think this is probably worth it. It's pushing it. 22 quid is an absolute steal. I think if you can get this for about £25, you should be okay. It's a no statement whiskey. We don't know how old this thing is. I imagine it's fairly youthful, judging by the characteristics I'm getting, but can't guarantee that. I'm not going to enter into a conversation about it. But yeah, for me, absolute winner. Really enjoyed this. Which I'm really glad about because I didn't enjoy it to start with, but that's the journey of whiskey. You know, always give whiskies a second chance. Don't just dismiss them immediately because you never know what will develop in the bottle, especially over time. This might even change as we go along. You know, if it does, maybe I'll do another review in a couple of years. I don't think this will last that long. This one's going to be definitely going in the guard whiskey category, and it's going to be looking after some more expensive whiskies, that's for sure. But for a nice sipping peated whiskey, I think this is a bit of a winner. I'm really enjoying it. Everyone else seems to be enjoying it. So if you see it in a shop, I reckon pick it up.